I get the vach, everybody. I'll tell you, Maisa, one of the great Tzadikim, Motzei Shabbos, the one that took over the leadership of the Hasidic movement after the Baal Shem Tov passed away, so Motzei Shabbos. So there's a Maisa like this, that a bacher once came to Motzei Shabbos for a bracha, for a shidduch. And he comes into Motzei Shabbos, gives his kvittel with his name and everything, asking for a shidduch. So Motzei Shabbos looks at it, and he asks an interesting question. Motzei Shabbos asks him, so why do you think you're having a hard time with shidduchim? Like, if you had to identify the problem, at least in your mind, asked Motzei Shabbos, what would the problem be? So the bacher thinks, he says, I'll tell you the truth. To me, what seems to be holding me back, honestly, says the bacher, is the fact that I don't have parnasa. I don't have a stable job. I don't have enough money to support a family. So I feel like that's one of the big obstacles in my way. So the Motzei Shabbos hears, okay. And then the Motzei Shabbos says like this. He says, my suggestion to you would be, is that the first shidduch that is presented to you, just say yes. The first shidduch. Now you have to understand, in those days, when we talk about a shidduch being presented, we're not talking about only just going on a date. We're talking about like to get married. So Motzei Shabbos said, first opportunity, just take it. Okay, that's the Rebbe says. Fine. Now, this bacher didn't live in the town of Mezrich where the Magid was. He lived in a distant town. And so it was a number of days traveling from his home to the Magid, and now from the Magid back home. So along the way, he stops by, he's passing through shtetl to shtetl. And so one of the shtetl that he's passing by, it's already getting late at night, so he has to stay overnight in this shtetl. So he goes to a kachmer, he goes to an inn, a hotel. And he goes in there, and the way it worked was that you would rent a room to sleep in, but then there was like this huge general dining room that everyone in the hotel would eat their meals and just hang out. And so this bacher, he's a God-fearing Jew, an Erlich bacher, and so he's in this dining room, and he sees what's going on, and the whole dining room is full of very, very rough and difficult personalities, let's put it that way. People that he wouldn't necessarily want to associate with or even have, he doesn't even want to make eye contact with them, doesn't want to have any trouble. It seemed to be in this dining room, the people that were there, the customers that were there in this hotel seemed to be the types that can cause trouble. He happens to be there, he didn't want to make any trouble, he didn't have any trouble. So this bacher is sitting in the corner, he's saying Tillim, he's learning, he's doing his thing. Now meanwhile, it's going on like this for a few hours. After a bunch of hours, all that's left in the dining room is this bacher sitting in the corner learning, and a bunch of, rough young men in the other side of the room who are drinking drink after drink after drink, getting drunk, getting aggressive with each other, just a rough bunch of people. And the whole time, this bacher is just like praying, don't let them see me, I don't want to. So what happens is, his mazel, these ruffians begin to take notice of this bacher sitting in the corner of the room. And so they're half drunk. And so they come over to him and they start, chapping with him. They push him around, pull his hat and making fun of him and trying to sort of instigate a fight. Now this bacher is not interested in fighting. He's just sitting as long and he's doing his whole thing. And at some point, they begin to ask him questions. And he feels threatened. If he feels that if he doesn't respond to their questions, they're going to beat him up or something. So he begins to engage them in a conversation. So they ask him what his name is, where is he from, and they ask him like, what's he doing here? So in the midst of this conversation, he's very intimidated by the whole thing. He begins to tell them that he was by the Motzei Shabbos. And they say, the ears peak up, like, the Motzei Shabbos. And what were you going to the tzaddik for? So he tells them, he's an innocent bacher, he probably shouldn't have told them, but this is what he does. He says that I was there by the Rebbe to get a bracha for shidduchim. For shidduchim. And what did the Rebbe tell you? So innocently, he says what the Rebbe said. That the Rebbe said that the first shidduch that is offered to me, I should take it. So now these guys know what they know what type of fun they're going to have the rest of the night. The first shidduch you want is taken. Well, one of these guys says, I have a sister. And the sister is working in the kitchen over here. And let's see, are you interested in the shidduch? Now this bacher is a tamimistic chassid. And the Rebbe said, the first shidduch opportunity you take. So that's what he does. yes, I'll take it. These guys don't believe it. They were expecting him to refuse, and then they would push him around. He says yes to the shidduch. And so then these guys want to test him further. He says, oh, okay, you say yes to a shidduch. Maybe that's tonight. By tomorrow you'll regret. You know what? I have an idea. Let's make the chasana now. Let's make a chuppah right now. And so the Bacher's like, the Rebbe said to be makabel the first shidduch, 100% fine. Let's do the chuppah mamash right now. So they bring the daughter, the sister in, and they tell her what's going on. The whole thing is a joke. The whole thing is they're not taking this too seriously. Meanwhile, they're elbowing him, pushing him around, pulling on his hat. The whole situation is very intimidating to this bacher. But the Rebbe said, take the first shidduch. He takes the first shidduch. And so what they do is they're half drunk. The girl's also half drunk, and they set up this chuppah, whatever it is, this makeshift chuppah. And the bacher says, he doesn't have a ring, but he has some kesef, something of value that he can be able to make a kedushin. The problem is you need a ksuba. So the guys are like, they were rough and they were half drunk, but at least they know in those days it was very pashut, you do a chasana, you're going to do it the right way. So you need a ksuba. How are we going to get a ksuba 3 o'clock in the morning in the middle of an inn, in the middle of nowhere? So the bacher says innocently, I know how to write a ksuba. He was a Talmud Chacham as well. I can write my own ksuba. He's taking this very seriously. So he sits down with a paper and pen, and mamish, from his own memory, writes a whole ksuba, and they go through the chasana. They find Eidim, not these drunk guys, but they knock on one of the hotel rooms, get two Erlich Yidden to come as witnesses, and they mamish make a chasana, and he gets married to this sister of one of these hooligans. And that's what happens. Now, meanwhile, now it's the middle of Shabbos brachas, right? So now these guys are drinking more l'chaims, and they're getting drunk, and they're getting even more rough with this poor chassan now, and they're just having a good time, and it's a big balagan. Now, meanwhile, the owner of this establishment was coming back from wherever he was, and the owner was actually the father of the kala, and the father of one of these boys as well, and all these other guys were the friends of the son of the owner of the balabas of this whole establishment. So he's coming home, it's very, very almost early morning, and he's on his way back from wherever he was, and he comes and he hears like a whole commotion going on in his hotel, and he opens the door and he sees a strange scene of his son with all of his friends. They're all half drunk, and his daughter's there half drunk, and this like innocent Chassidish bacher that's there, like Saint Tillman learning, and there's like a makeshift chuppah, like what's going on over here? So he tries to get like what's going on. So meanwhile, his son and his daughter come to him, and they explain what happened, that there was this bacher over here, we wanted to have fun with him, and we made a whole chasana. Now meanwhile, this guy's son again was a rough kid, his daughter is a rough girl, and all of their friends were rough people, but he's an adult already, he's an adult person, a businessman, and he chaps that his kids are not exactly, not taking life too seriously. So he goes over to this Chassidish kid and he says, listen, what's his name? Yankel. He says, Yankel, listen, I'm so sorry that my son and his rough friends made you crazy all night. I really apologize, but you could go home now. So he's like, I married your daughter. It was a real kedushin. And the balabas says, listen, I'm doing you a favor. Just go home. Don't worry about it. He said, no, this is a real kedushin. And he shows him the ksuba. And it was like a real, and he gave her something of monetary value for kedushin. And now the balabas is thinking, oh my gosh, my daughter just got married. Like what am I supposed to do? So he says to the bacher, to the chassan, he says, listen, you know how to write a ksuba by heart, write a get by heart, and divorce my daughter. This is ridiculous. So he's like, no, I went to the Motzei Shabbos yesterday, and this is where it's all coming from. The Motzei Shabbos said, the first shidduch it's offered you should take it. This was the first shidduch, I'm taking it. And the balabas is like, are you mishiggin? What's wrong with you? You don't know my daughter. She is not up to your standard in Yiddishkeit b'chalal. You see what the scenario is over here. Are you crazy? Divorce my wife and move on in your life. This is ridiculous. This is clearly not what the Motzei Shabbos meant. He said, no, the Rebbe said do it. So the father says, okay, I know what this is about. You want 500 ruble? I'll give you 500 ruble to divorce my daughter. Nothing doing. I'm not doing it for the money. It's not because I'm not trying to blackmail you. The Rebbe said I should take my first shidduch. This is my first shidduch. And the father's like, 1,000 ruble. So you want 1,000 ruble? Fine, I'll give you 1,000 ruble. I'll give you 1,000 ruble to divorce my wife. Nothing doing. I'm not interested. This is my wife. This is Bashert. The Rebbe said take the first shidduch. So the Baal Bas doesn't know what to do. This bacher is not giving in at all. So he says, listen, what if we go back right now to Motzei Shabbos and we go into the Rebbe and we'll tell the Rebbe the situation? I guarantee you, the Rebbe hearing the situation is ridiculous. This is clearly not what he meant. So if the Rebbe himself tells you to divorce my daughter, will you do it? He said, of course, if the Rebbe says I'll do it, I'll do it. I'm only married because the Rebbe said yes. So if he says to divorce, I will also. Fine. So the Baal Bas is absolutely convinced that the Motzei Shabbos is going to tell them to end this. This is ridiculous. So they go back to Mezrich and they go and they have an appointment with the Rebbe and they go in and they tell over the whole situation, what happened. And then the Baal Bas says to Motzei Shabbos, he says, Rebbe, isn't it obvious that that he should divorce my wife, my daughter? So the Motzei Shabbos thinks for a minute and he says, I understand the situation. Let me talk to the chassan privately. Okay. Says what happens. So the chassan stays in the room. The father-in-law leaves. And the Rebbe says to the chassan, he says, listen, it's mistama, it probably makes sense for you to divorce her. But l'maisa, if your father-in-law offered you 1,000 ruble, then you should take the 1,000 ruble. Divorce her, but make sure you get the 1,000 ruble first. Get your father-in-law to give you 1,000 ruble, and then you'll commit to divorce his daughter. Okay, that's what the Rebbe said. Calls the Baal Bas back in. And so he says to him, listen, I spoke to the chassan, and we agree that it makes sense for him to divorce your daughter, but you did agree to give 1,000 ruble, so you have to give 1,000 ruble first. Okay? That's the Baal Bas says, okay, I did say that. If that's the deal, that's the deal. He writes a check or whatever the situation is, he gives the bacher 1,000 ruble. And now the Rebbe says, okay, now that the chassan got 1,000 ruble, now it's okay for him to divorce your daughter. And so they're about to leave, and the chassan's gonna get they're gonna write up a get and they'll go through a divorce. As they're about to open the door to leave, the Motzei Shabbos calls the Baal Bas. He says, listen, one second, but before you go, I know what you're probably worried about. What are you worried about? He says, after this whole mess, what you have a big problem on your hands. What's the big problem? Now your daughter is a grusha. She's a divorcee. And it's going to be that much harder for her to find a shidduch. So the Baal Bas is thinking, it is part of my, it is on my head right now that I'm not, how am I going to explain this to any future prospects that my wife is a divorce, that my daughter is a divorcee, and I'm going to have to explain this whole scenario, and it's not going to paint her in a positive light. It's a problem. So the Motzei Shabbos says, but I have an eitzah. What's my eitzah? Happens to be I know of a chassan. And this chassan actually just fell into a lot of money, 1,000 ruble. And happens to be this chassan, I'm pretty sure, is willing to marry your daughter. And if they go through with it, then I'll give you a bracha, haftach. I promise you that everyone will be, their Yiddishkeit will be raised, your daughter's Yiddishkeit will be raised to the level of the chassan. And they'll be able to see nachas, they'll have children, Doris Yisharim, Mamish Adbi is called Tzaddik, it'll be a beautiful mishpach in Klal Yisrael until Mashiach comes. So the Baal Bas is hearing this. Who's the chassan? So the Motzei Shabbos said, right there, that's the chassan. He fell into 1,000 ruble, and he's willing to marry, to stay married to your daughter. It should be a shidduch, it should be, the zivik should be Oil Yafa. Baal Bas heard that, he says, okay, fine. He's like the Rebbe, that's the way it is. And they got married. As Hashem, they had children, they had nachas, and she was able to be raised up. Her Yiddishkeit matched him. They're able to reduce mishpach l'shem l'chavir u'sifars. It's a funny story, but there are some things in life that when you first experience them, it feels like a joke. It feels like ridiculous. How could there be anything positive coming out of this? But you know what? Sometimes Hashem has a way of bringing good things in the world, and the way it enters into the world is in a way that people don't realize it's good. But only once it's here, then already it's here, and eventually it reveals itself as good. Hashem should bless us that everything Hashem does for us is good, and everything Hashem does is only shefa, bracha, and hatzlacha. Sometimes it starts off in a joke. Sometimes it starts off in an opposite type of way. It starts off in a way that's not so obviously good. But once it's here, it's here. And then eventually it'll morph and it'll develop and it'll manifest itself as only goodness. Hashem should bless us. Should be to see this week good in a manifest and a revealed way, a week of hatzlacha, of Yeshuas, of Nechamas, of Exalted, Tzadikim, Amen.